and is true in this presidency is because the people who know me best know that I consistently have not only befriended the Jewish community, not only have I been strong on Israel, but more importantly, I've been willing to speak out even when it's not comfortable. When I was, just last point I would make, when I was had the honor of giving a sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church in conjunction with Martin Luther King's birthday in front of a large African-American audience, I specifically spoke out against anti-Semitism within the African-American community. And that's what gives people confidence that I will continue to do that when I'm President of the United States.
Jim, I just want to add something here because I faced a similar situation when I ran for the Senate in 2000 in New York. And in New York, there are more than the two parties, Democratic and Republican. And one of the parties at that time, the Independence Party, was under the control of people who were anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and I made it very clear that I did not want their support. I rejected it. I said that it would not be anything I would be comfortable with, and it looked as though I might pay a price for that. But I would not be associated with people who said such inflammatory and untrue charges against either Israel or Jewish people in our country. And, you know, I was willing to take that stand, and, you know, fortunately the people of New York supported me and I won, but at the time I thought it was more important to stand on principle and to reject the kind of conditions that went with support like that.
Are you suggesting Senator Obama's not standing on principle?
No, I'm just saying that you asked specifically if he would reject it. And there's a difference between denouncing and rejecting. And I think when it comes to this sort of, you know, inflammatory, I have no doubt that everything that Barack just said is absolutely sincere. But I just think we've got to be even stronger. We cannot let anyone in any way say these things because of the implications that they have, which can be so far-reaching.
Tim, I have to say, I don't see a difference between denouncing and rejecting. There's no formal offer of help from Minister Farrakhan that would involve me rejecting it. But if the word reject, Senator Clinton feels is stronger than the word denounce, then I'm happy to concede the point. And I would reject and denounce.
Good, good.
Okay,
excellent.
We're a rare audience outburst on the agreement over rejecting and renouncing. We're going to take advantage of this opportunity to take the second of our limited breaks. We'll be back live from Cleveland right after this. We are back from Cleveland State University. We continue with our debate. The question beginning this segment is for you, Senator Obama. The National Journal rates your voting record as more liberal than that of Ted Kennedy. In a general election, going up against a Republican Party looking for converts, Republicans, independents, how can you run with a more liberal voting record than Ted Kennedy?
Well, first of all, let's take a look at what the National Journal rated us on. It turned out Senator Clinton and I had differences on 2 votes. The first was on an immigration issue, where the question was whether guest workers could come here, work for 2 years, go back for a year, and then come back and work for another 2 years, which meant essentially that you were going to have illegal immigrants for a year because they wouldn't go back, and I thought it was bad policy. The second, and this I think is telling in terms of how silly these ratings are, I supported an Office of Public Integrity, an independent office that would be able to monitor ethics investigations in the Senate, because I thought it was important for the public to know that if there were any ethical violations in the Senate, that they weren't being investigated by the senators themselves, but there was somebody independent who would do it. This is something that I tried to push as part of my ethics package. It was rejected. And according to the National Journal, that position is a liberal position. Now, I don't think that's a liberal position. I think there are a lot of Republicans and a lot of independents who would like to make sure that ethics investigations are not conducted by the people who are potentially being investigated. So the categories don't make sense. And part of the reason I think a lot of people have been puzzled, why is it that Senator Obama's campaign, this supposed liberal, is attracting more independent votes than any other candidate in the Democratic primary, and Republican votes as well, and then people are scratching their head. It's because people don't want to go back to those old categories of what's liberal and what's conservative. They want to see who is making sense, who's fighting for them, who's going to go after the special interests, who is going to champion the issues of health care and making college affordable and making sure that we have a foreign policy that makes sense. That's what I've been doing, and that's why the proof is in the pudding. We've been attracting more independent and Republican support than anybody else, and that's why every poll shows that right now I beat John McCain in a matchup in the general election.
Let's go from domestic to foreign affairs and Tim Russell.
Before the primary on Tuesday, on Sunday, March 2, there's an election in Russia for the successor to President Putin. What can you tell me about the man who's going to be Mr. Putin's successor?
Well, I can tell you that he's a hand-picked successor, that he is someone who is obviously being installed by Putin, who Putin can control, who has very little independence, the best we know. There's a lot of information still to be acquired, that the so-called opposition was basically run out of the political opportunity to wage a campaign against Putin's hand-picked successor. And the so-called leading opposition figure spends most of his time praising Putin. So this is a clever but transparent way for Putin to hold on to power. And it raises serious issues about how we're going to deal with Russia going forward. I have been very critical of the Bush administration for what I believe to have been an incoherent policy toward Russia. And with the reassertion of Russia's role in Europe, with some of the mischief that they seem to be causing in supporting Iran's nuclear ambitions, for example, it's imperative that we begin to have a more realistic and effective strategy toward Russia. But I have no doubt as president, even though technically the meetings may be with the man who is labeled as president, the decisions will be made by Putin.
Who will it be? Do you know his name?
Medvedev, whatever.
Yes.
Yes.
Senator Obama, you know anything about him?
Well, I think Senator Clinton speaks accurately about him. He is somebody who was handpicked by Putin. Putin has been very clear that he will continue to have the strongest hand in Russia in terms of running the government. And let's just think back to the beginning of President Bush's administration when he said, he met with Putin, looked into his eyes and saw his soul, and figured he could do business with him. He then proceeded to neglect our relationship with Russia at a time when Putin was strangling any opposition in the country, when he was consolidating power, rattling sabers against his European neighbors as well as satellites of the former Soviet Union. And so we did not send a signal to Mr. Putin that in fact we were going to be serious about issues like human rights, issues like international cooperation that were critical to us. That is something that we have to change.
He's 42 years old. He's a former law professor. Mm-hmm. He was Mr. Putin's campaign manager. He's going to be the new president of Russia. Mm-hmm. And if he says to the Russian troops, you know what, why don't you go help Serbia, retake Kosovo, what does President Obama do?
Well, I think that we work with the international community that has also recognized Kosovo and state that that's unacceptable. But fortunately, we have a strong international structure anchored in NATO to deal with this issue. We don't have to work in isolation. And this is an area where I think that the Clinton administration deserves a lot of credit, is the way in which they put together a coalition that has functioned. It has not been perfect, but it saved lives. and we created a situation in